Hello everyone, welcome to Digital Consciousness TV. You have to excuse me, I'm fighting off a flu at the moment, so I'm a little bit under the weather, but the show must go on because we've organised a really special interview for our local community. Normally I do some of the larger ones with in the international community, but I really wanted to bring it back to Perth, and it's my hometown, and I was looking through and thinking who would be a wonderful person to connect with and to interview that's really local and has that, she really has a level of authenticity about her, and I just felt drawn straight away when I saw her, and I hadn't, it was one of those things. These things happen synchronistically, and I feel like it did with Tracy, and so I'm really pleased to be able to. We had a wonderful interview, and I can't wait to share it with you. We talked a lot about the digital and the next generation, the mental well-being of the next generation, and just a little bit about the concept of digital consciousness. So I hope you enjoy the interview, but a little bit about Tracy before we start that you might not have known, and I'm going to include some links and things in there as well for you, because she wrote an amazing book called Small Bamboo, and it's an amazing story about her journey, if you like, or her path to arriving here in Perth, and her family, her childhood. It's quite an interesting one where she spoke about her family's story of survival when it began in the Vietnam War in 1968, and they arrived on the and it had arrived on the doorstep of her father's childhood home, and so the book itself is a really interesting book. It speaks about her journey as or her path toward being bullied in school, and that integration into Perth, and she really has a heart of gold is what came up for me just then when I was thinking about that. She really does. She's a very warm, very kind, and you can feel that, very kind, very woman, and real. And I feel like sometimes the adversities and the things that she shares in her story in Small Bamboo is those are the many things that really build, I think, those level of characters. Sometimes when we face adversity, a lot when we're younger, we can choose the path of replicating that, or we can choose kindness and love and compassion for other people, and I feel like she chose that path, and it sort of emanates through her when she's speaking. So I hope you enjoy the interview, but yeah, a little bit about her. So in 2004 she actually started her journalism career in radio, and she reported for 6PR and Curtin FM, and then in 2004 she went across to Sydney and worked at the radio station 2SM, and she was a field producer for Anzac Day events and also the Sky News health and book shows, and then by 2010 she was offered a role as a political reporter in Nine's Canberra bureau. And then after she sort of pursued a busy year in politics, she then returned to Sydney as a general reporter, and then by the end of 2011 she took on the medical realm. So she's had quite an interesting career, and by about 10 years, when she was over east, she decided to head back home to Perth, and she's now, you would have seen her on the 9 News Perth team, gracing our TV screens every day. So yeah, and since being home, she has covered some amazing stories, some large stories, both in Australia and overseas, and also became a published author. In 2016 she also hosted the Today Perth, so you will know Tracy's face very well, I'm sure, and just I welcome you to step into our interview with an open mind and an exploration into what does it really mean for our next generation's well-being, our next generation's mental well-being, when it comes to the state of digital, which she made a very good point. We're talking over digital doing the interview, so how do you find that balance between the two? So how do we use it as a tool versus abusing it to a point where it takes over our social interactions? So I hope you enjoyed the discussion, very candid discussion, on purpose. So I hope you feel like you're sitting in the living room with us and having a chat. So enjoy the interview, and for more information, so Digital Consciousness TV is a component of the Emotional Literacy and Mindfulness Academy for Kids, as a part of, just interesting sideways topics that we can consider. So so enjoy. You can find out more about us at theemotionalliteracyacademy.com, and hit us up on Facebook or Instagram, which is under Emotional Literacy Academy. All right, enjoy the interview. See you soon. Welcome, Tracy. Thank you so much for joining us on Digital Consciousness TV. It's like a really nice, candid way for us to connect with what I would position as really amazing people out there doing some pretty amazing things. So thank you so much for joining us to share some of your insights.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Yeah, so I thought we might start, and the reason being, in part of the past interviews that I've done have been with, some international people who have like Don Miguel Ruiz and Dr. John DeMartini, some really interesting people. Then I thought, no, who's local? Someone, because we're Perth, the Kids Academy's Perth, and I saw you sort of popping up on Twitter and some of your messages, and I just thought, there's something about you I wanted to, I don't know, it was just like one of these things. I was like, I've got to talk to her, and I didn't know why, and then I started to dig deeper, and I'd really love for you to share a little bit first about your story, and it's a really interesting story about your journey to being where you are today, and how you do what you do. So
Well, yeah, I guess I'm on the news these days, on TV every day, and it's been quite a fantastic path getting here now. I'm the daughter of Vietnamese refugees, and so first generation Australian. So my brother and I, and we have loved growing up here in Australia and being Australian as well. But in terms of just childhood, it was wonderful at times and not so great at other times. I faced racism, bullying, and that a lot of self-esteem issues as a child, and it's been a very I don't really like using the term journey, but it is a long journey to try and break down those negative thoughts, and really build those tools mentally to be able to reach the goals that I've been able to reach so far. And I credit a really awesome support network, my family are extremely strong, and also our wonderful friends and colleagues as well. And I think I really enjoyed, I've written a book called Small Bamboo, and I'm really thrilled that I've been able to put it out there, because I guess a lot of the kids these days, they do tend to, it's probably worse these days, to be honest, in terms
of social media,
dealing with and kids can be really nasty as well. I don't think there's intent to be nasty, but I hope that reading my book, and I know it's in a lot of libraries in schools across Perth and Australia, that some of the children growing up can find a little bit of inspiration and strength when they read my story.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it really is about that, it's just about us sharing. I think a lot of it is the journey that, Joseph Campbell calls it the hero's journey. And it's this journey where we take as much of the word journey, but, perhaps a path that we take, and we take this path and we go through adversity and we go through struggles, and then that becomes our elixir, our gift to give on to other people to assist them on their path, which has been, it's a really beautiful gift to be able to give to people. And, it was really interesting in reading your journey, especially with the bullying and that, and I resonate a lot with that. That happened a lot to me as well. And so it really is one of these things when you then put the layer of digital on top of that. What do you sort of foresee, with, both of us say we both don't have children, but I work with children. I have an affinity with children with the Kids Academy, and but where do you sort of foresee that future for kids when it comes to the digital and the overlaying of the digital noise that we've got to work with?
It's a really tough one. We have a lot of experts that we interview on 9 News, who I bring in onto my afternoon news, and I try to dig a lot of information from them, or try to extract a lot of information from them, because it's a really tough issue to tackle, because you can't, no matter how organised you are or how strict you are, you can't kind of police it with your kids. You know, I'm very conscious because, you know, eventually I would love to have children of my own, and I'm really hoping, you know, everything's a bit of a cycle, I suppose, and I'm really hoping, you know, vain hope that by the time I have children, you know, we go back to the traditional things of, you know, being able to play out on the street, on, you know, on the footpath, going to the park quite easily, rather than being in front of screens and watching things all the time and relying on that as, I suppose, you know, as a backup to try and keep them, you know, settled or distracted, I suppose. But I mean, I'm more concerned about the dangers that are out there in terms of inflicting negative thoughts for young kids. I mean, we're hearing lots of children, I think as young as 3 or even 5, suffering from anxiety because of social issues and social pressures, and that, you know, that they should just be able to be kids at that age and not have a care in the world. I do believe, and I mean, I'm guilty of it. I'm on social media for my work. I have to be. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, but that's as far as I go. I haven't gone any further in terms of, I mean, I don't even know how to use Snapchat or whatever the other things that the kids use these days. And I understand that there is that level of social pressure to present yourself in a certain way, to compare yourself. I try to keep, to set an example, I try to keep things really authentic. I'm quite open about my friends and my family in terms of social things. I'm posting things on social, and but also just trying to be authentic and really not trying to glamorize anything or, you know, over dramatize anything online. But I'm really conscious of young minds these days, and also leading to potentially really, you know, fatal or really nasty things in the future for these young minds. That really scares me. It hurts me as well, because we should be doing more, I think, to protect these people, because these young kids, they're our future as well, and we kind of want to set the example now, and hopefully, as I said, everything's a cycle. I hope that we can change things around.
Yeah. And where do you think it starts? You know, do you think the responsibility sits with the parents or sits with the, you know, the schools or the governments, or it's such a, you know?
Look, again, I'm not a parent myself yet, and I no doubt will probably be guilty of, you know, having to use screens at some points just to keep my kids settled and that sort of stuff. But I think it's a collective responsibility. I don't think you can kind of put it onto one person or the other, or one section or the other. You know, it can, I guess, start from the family, and then, you know, the schools, but the entire community as well. I mean, you look out on the street and everyone's on their phones. I mean, recently, you know, I think New York City is proposing a ban on street texting because it's so bad. People are on the street and they're stopping in the middle of the road because they're too busy texting, or they're bumping into people. I mean, that's how far we're having to go these days, is to use the authorities, when they should, you know, police and all that should be used for other things. But I mean, that's the community we live in these days, society we live in these days. So I think it's a collective responsibility. You know, I think the more we talk about it, like what you're doing is a fantastic initiative, and hopefully the more we talk about it, we can be more conscious about our digital use, and hopefully reduce it in some way.
Yeah, I mean, I often say that you know, it's something we can't necessarily hide in a bubble from, but it's how do we mitigate our exposure? How do we mitigate the risk? And like, that's what we do within the Kids Academy. We teach, you know, there's some really good little systems you can have in place for kids as to, you know, screen time and things like that. But really, you're teaching them how to unplug, and that was sort of, I suppose, part of that solution, if you like, of looking where that came from, was how do we unplug a plugged-in generation, but still offer good solutions, but not completely hide them from the, you know, because there are a lot of benefits to technology as well. So, you know, there's plenty out there.
I think the tough thing is as well, we don't, there's a level of, I guess, fear as well to allow kids, I guess, you know, trying to present alternatives for kids rather than sitting in front of screens, is get them outdoors, go let them ride their bikes. But there's also that fear and that concern in society of the dangers for kids if they do that these days. I remember, with my brother, my parents would freely let us go and ride our bikes to the park and play with the neighbourhood kids, but that really happens these days because there's that level of fear of what could happen to your child. So it's a vicious cycle. I think there's a flow-on effect on how we feel about society and what we can do out there, and unfortunately I think that's the way we're going these days.
Yeah, which I think is why it can be quite overwhelming to look at the bigger picture of it and the collective of it, where, sometimes I encourage people to come back to just in the home. It starts with self. It starts with what you do in the home. It starts with how, it all begins. It begins there. And then we can work our way out, a little bit at a time. And if everybody starts doing a little bit in their own home, then they're adding to that collective ripple effect, hopefully. So it doesn't get too overwhelming.
I guess it's also time, isn't it? I mean, I would like to think also by the time I have children, and again, it's a luxury, but to have the time to physically be able to take my kids to the park and go ride bikes, take them to the beach. I think, unfortunately, a lot of parents, they're having to work, which is no fault of their own, and that's when they have to rely on, I guess, the easier option, I guess, is to, use screens and plonk them in front of the TV so they don't have the actual time. But I suppose, it'd be a wonderful world, wouldn't it? If we were able to have time to do those things for our kids. So as I said
the earlier, balancing act in many ways. Yeah, and I don't think there's any right way or wrong way. It's just how do you consistently tweak and reflect. So you look at what you did that day and you're like, okay, well, maybe I'll do that differently tomorrow, and then maybe just tweak and reflect and making sure that we're not sort of out there sort of, punishing people, say, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, you shouldn't be doing this. It's just, how do we just refine it? How do we get better at it? How do we become more aware of it? Because that's sort of where it begins, really. Otherwise we're just, heading into another vicious cycle of institutionalizing the good and bad behaviours of what we should and shouldn't do with screen time. So, and how do you think on another level from one, you've been bullied in school, I've been bullied in school. So now let's put social media on top of that. And how do you deal with that? How do you now deal with it? Do you have any issues on social media as an adult, with bullying or anything like that? Do you ever get a shock from what people have the capacity to say?
Yeah. I working in the media, you get a lot of comments come through. I remember I was when I first started presenting back in Perth. I used to work over east, and then I moved back home and I first started presenting the news. And I had a couple of trolls on Twitter saying that they didn't want my particular kind of face on their TV screens and that sort of stuff. And I mean, it's no laughing matter, but I just laugh it off because I just think, you know what, you're the minority, and my mind is much stronger, obviously, as an adult, and so you just think they're just ignorant, and also they're just cowards because they hide behind a keyboard and a screen and a phone. They, I would love for them to come and say it to my face. Love them to have the courage to do that and see if they would do that. So, we can't avoid those sorts of comments. I know a lot of my colleagues have definitely copped it too.
How do they cope with it? What's, do you find, because sometimes it can get to you.
Sometimes, look, it can, but you just have to try and not let it stick, let it slide, and because it's not they're not intelligent comments either. No, you have to and sometimes I have friends who do reply, but in a really witty, humorous way, nothing nasty. But my approach is just, I feel silence is golden. Yeah. And also, I know it's such a cliche, but you can kill them with kindness as well, and go, look, that's what you think, that's fine, but it's not going to bring me down. And I think that's hopefully the way that I behave can set the example for the younger generation as well, just to go, you don't have to be you don't have to stoop to their level either. Just be kind, respectful, because that's how we should be in a society. And I just honestly, I look at it, I look at some tweets. I haven't had many lately, which is this for that. But when I did get them, I just would laugh them off. And I would tell some friends here, they would actually get quite angry and fired up. But I was like, oh, look, it takes too much energy. Don't worry about it. I think it's just, again, they're just cowards, unintelligent, and you just got to move on and, again, kill them with kindness.
Yeah. And I think, one of the, something I think that's close to your heart as well as to mine is the mental well-being of young kids of today. The suicide rates are just going skyrocketing, and we're seeing more and more children with anxiety. What's your sort of take on that, and your experience? Obviously, being in the work that you're in, you're exposed to so many different things. You would obviously find some some interesting insights, if you like. So
yeah, it is a huge concern in terms of mental illness. I'm a huge advocate for groups who are trying to create awareness and also support people who of a range of ages as well, because we're seeing it a lot in adults too. And I do have huge sympathy and also personal connections with mental illness, so I empathise with anyone who does suffer from it. I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of pressure in society these days. It goes back to the pressure and comparing yourselves and thinking you should be at a certain level, or thinking you should be a certain person or doing a certain thing. And I think I'm hoping that we can all build more strength of character in terms of, we all have our own path, we all have our own adversities. Also, we all have our own positive times too, so we can't keep comparing ourselves to other people's lives. But this is what we're doing on social media, is because it is all accessible. We get to see everyone else's life, not just, our friends and our family, but, we look at celebrities and musicians, and we would, be guilty of comparing ourselves to them. And, again, our younger generation, they're just flooded with all these images and, things that even the materialistic things as well, which can add to your mental well-being, because you think, well, I need that certain thing to be cool or whatever, or you don't want to be teased because you don't have the latest pair of shoes or something like that. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's adding to everything. I'm really thrilled that there are a lot of groups coming out now, and people as well speaking about it more. We do have a lot of celebrities as well actually being quite open about mental illness, which I think I hope that can help our younger generation sort of deal with it. But I'm hoping we can curb it too, because I don't want our younger generation to all have kinds of anxiety or self-esteem issues, because they should be so happy at that time of their lives as well, and again be free, carefree, and young, and be children. So it is a huge concern.
And there is a little bit of a fine line, do you find, between how much focus we give it as an issue versus, sometimes we can focus so much on an issue that we can create more of the issue by focusing on it.
Look, we've actually discussed this in the newsroom before, where we hear a lot about mental illness these days, and we say, well, is it because it's a growing issue, or are we just talking about it more? Before, I know the older generation, they don't dare speak about having a weak mind, especially men. And I'm so thrilled now that even our male population, more of them are addressing these issues and saying they're suffering anxiety or depression, that sort of stuff. I can kind of see your point in terms of our, the more we talk about, are we kind of creating the issue more? But look,
well, maybe we're opening the dialogue to the issue, as opposed to something that was always hidden. Is now that the door's open.
Yes, that's how I feel it's come about now, in terms of more people are actually talking about it now. We're creating more awareness, and people are more open to talking about having some mental health issues, anxiety, stuff. So again, I just hope it doesn't, it's not just creating this whole, dramatic kind of, mental health, epidemic or whatever. I just think more people are talking.
Yeah. And in your journey of or in your, path of going through and understanding, seeing, so I suppose interviewing many walks of life, many different types of people in your journey as a journalist. And what have you found probably the most sustainable solution for our next generation? Have you come across something that's been like, yeah, that's really a sustainable solution that's actually going to create long-term change?
I haven't yet. But I must say, I think sustainable solution is just, you've got some wonderful leaders out there who want to talk about it, help children, volunteers as well, who create these groups. And even some, like yourself as well, doing these things. The Academy is a great initiative. So I think that is probably our most sustainable option at, because we need people who are willing to take on this issue and spend the time with the kids to say, let's not go down that path, let's take the positive path. I think that's the sustainable option at the moment, because it is kind of just ramping up. It's been an issue, but again, we've only been making noise about it in recent times. I think the more we talk about it and give these kids the tools to deal with mental health issues, but also making a limit on being online and going digital. I think that's really, really set just a little time frame day by day to give them that little space, but then also remind them that they can do other things as well, not just be on screens.
yeah. And so on that topic, this channel and this station and the book and everything that we do is called Digital Consciousness. And I often like to ask the people that we interview, what does digital consciousness mean to you? Like, if that term, like, what would it mean to you, and how would you describe being digitally conscious?
I think for me, first thing that pops up to mind is just, being accountable for how much time I spend on screens. I'm limiting myself daily. It's hard for me, again, because I have to be. The main thing I'm day to day is Twitter for news. But I've really made a conscious effort to have a time limit on how much I use. I also, have try and set a deadline in the evening to not use my phone as much as possible. I love books, so I'm piling up the books next to my bedside table so that I can touch my phone. Other sort of tricks that people have told me about is either you delete your apps on your phone, so you don't have to. They're just not one click of a button. You actually have to go on that or a computer to log on and have a look. Is I hide the apps in a separate folder, so then they're kind of hidden, so not constantly. I was guilty of going onto Instagram. I would scroll, put my phone down for 20 seconds. It was just a habit. Open it up again, and I'm back on Instagram. And I went, hang on a second, I just had a look. I had a look at all these. So I was guilty of it, and what I've done, I've put, in all honesty, I've put my Instagram and Facebook apps in another folder, so I have to physically go into a folder.
Love it.
And find it, and I'm hoping as time goes on, I don't need to be on my phone. And I feel like I guess I'm probably trying to set the path for my for my future and also my future kids, because I don't want to be. I see. I'm not trying to judge, but I do see a lot of parents, they're on their phones. It's just as much as, while their kids are sitting right there having a meal. And I just think, we need to set the example and, get them out and about and use their brains more, be more creative and interactive rather than just having a digital kind of babysitter, I suppose.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And then like for us with when we talk about being digitally conscious as well, it's it's really having a kind of term, and through my own my own experiences as well. I'd built a large digital agency over the years, like over a 7-year period, and realised that I was a part of the problem and not a part of the solution, which is what promoted me to create the Kids Academy. And I thought, hang on, I need to create a sustainable solution here and do something different. And that was sort of the path through to that. But what I found was that in that, and a lot of us, when we start to become aware of it, is that social media does become like a self-awareness tool if we use it. And I'm, again, same as you, guilty of it, getting on the phone, scrolling. But what I've been able to flag myself with is it becomes a red flag for me. The subconscious mind is now tapping into outward validation, so looking for something outward to bring me happiness or bring me joy. And it's like, well, hang on, if I'm looking out there, then what's going on in here? So it's just kind of this, and I use it as that flag, and I'm like, oh, I'm doing it more. Okay, what's going on in here? And then it makes me put it down and go, okay, let's have a look at what's happening here, because clearly I'm not feeling connected with myself. So that's what I've, what we've kind of taught as well, is there's a really good self-awareness barometer when you're looking in the Facebook fridge and you're not hungry.
Yes, that's true. That's true. That's a very good point. I'm going to take that flag too for me.
Yeah.
I say though, because we're talking about screen time and being digital, but I mean the way we're chatting now is
exactly.
So I mean, I guess my question would be, would people think that we're being a bit hypocritical here? I suppose, in terms of having. But I guess is that the way the world?
Well, it's management. It's management. Yeah, and this is the thing. This is part of what our teachings are as well. It's mitigation. It's using it for the advantage and the tool that it's used for, like this, which is great, but not abusing it in the sense that we become to. We're using this for a purpose, and it has a greater purpose because it's going to filter out to people, and people will watch it, and then they'll get their messages. But I think that when we are just mindlessly sitting on the phone flicking through, and it's not bringing us any, when we're getting, we've kind of overloaded our brain with dopamine hits where it becomes an addiction. That's the part where it's like, how do we mitigate that part? But how do we still use it to our advantage?
That was a journalist coming out of me.
Yeah, I love it. No, it's a really wonderful question, and it's great to cover, because I think it is a really valid point. I think it's yes, we're using technology as we're talking, so where are the parameters? And that's just that's what I sort of teach, is like, we can't hide from it, but we use it as a tool, and then we just make sure we manage how we're using it in our social interactions, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Very good.
Wonderful. And so for Small Bamboo, with your book, so if people want to get hold of it, how would they, I've noticed it's at Dimmicks, and it's just kind of all over the place, isn't it? So where's the best place?
I mean, online, unfortunately. I mean, if you want to get it sent to you, I understand that Dimmicks can order it in as well. So there's still plenty of books out there for people to buy. It is, if people choose to do so, it is on Kindle and on iBooks as well. Again, that's probably a nice way just to manage their screen time, and instead of being on social media, they can actually read a book online on a screen. But yeah, if you choose to, go into a store, you can get it through Dimmicks and they can order it in for you, that's for sure. But I just really hope that people can resonate with the story, and it does cover a lot of things in terms of my parents coming here from Vietnam, and then myself growing up in Perth, and going through school, and then getting into the media as well. So I hope people can relate to it and enjoy it as well, and I guess find a little bit of inspiration in some way.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. It is quite an inspirational read. So, so I'll put the link in for people to get access to it anyway, so then they know.
That'd be
cool. But what about you? Like, what do you do outside of the media? Outside of this, what's your unwinding downtime, Tracy time?
Yeah, my time. I love to obviously spend time with my family and my friends. And I love cooking. Cooking is my therapy. It's another, I guess, creative outlet. Yeah. I enjoy a little bit of knitting as well.
Wow.
So, Yeah. I just took it up a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I thought, why not? And amazingly, my mother kept her knitting needles from the 80s.
Wow.
So she gave me things.
That's
She's like,
awesome.
just take them. Yeah. I'm not fast. And I've been promising one of my colleagues at Channel 9 a scarf, and I said it'd be winter, and we've only got now, so I need to get cracking on the scarf. And I love, living in Perth. Our lifestyle is so wonderful here, and we've got. I'm a water person, so I love going to the beach, and and those are the sorts of things that I'd like to pass on to my kids. So, I guess in lieu of screen time, I'd love them to join in with me to do, be in the kitchen, and we can go to the beach and do some knitting in the future or something like that. So these are the sorts of things that I would, I'd like to carry on to my future kids in the future. And again, try to reduce that time and reliance, I suppose, on screens.
And it's just a healthy relationship with it's like everything in moderation, isn't it? So we do too much of one thing, then it's always, whether it's good or bad, it's not gonna be benefit to us.
That's it. It is, and everything in moderation is fine. I also again love to head out with my friends on a weekend, and that sort of stuff. So it's everything in moderation is a very good thing, and balance, as you said earlier.
Well, it's balance as best we can, isn't it? It's kind of like you have balance, and then you get a spanner that throws the balance off, and then you get that assignment on how do I manage this one, and then you get the learning, and then you start again.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. and knitting is a beautiful mindfulness exercise, actually. So that's great that you do that.
Yes, no, I really enjoy it. I mean, I must admit, sometimes I just have the TV on in the background, but it's still a nice sort of, it grounds you, it brings you back down, and and again, it's another creative outlet for me that I really enjoy. And I think it's so lovely by the end product, and you can give someone a gift as well. So
wonderful.
there.
Oh, well, it's been a real pleasure to get to know you in this time over our digital screens.
Including me, and I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I'm sure everyone will continue to enjoy watching you grace the screens, and even more so now with understanding a little bit more about who you are as a person, and your background, and your loves, and your beliefs, and that. And it's wonderful that we have people like you out there doing and representing that kind of looking in the welfare of our future generation, and that's at the forefront of your mind. So thank you so much.
I hope I can help out in any way, and I hope that I can provide our younger generation with just a little bit of brightness for their future.
And that's a wonderful gift to give to the world. So on behalf of the human family, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
So have a beautiful day. I know you've got to race off now to your next gig. So thank you for making the time, and everybody who's watching, all the links will be below, and how you can get hold of Small Bamboo and have that.
Thank you.
On your
Keep
bookshelf.
smiling.
Thanks a lot, Tracy. All right. Bye.
Bye.